Right. Oh, for God's sake. Wipe your bayonet, Kinsella. You killed enough. Go on, says I. That's genuine, says Kinsella. That's what Lord Roberts says to me and Blamefontein, and not one. I knew him before, of course, from the time we were in Egg White. Shifty, cush, says Bobbs, when he seen me in parade. Is that you, Kinsella? It is, says I, coming smartly to attention. Who were you expecting? You've killed enough of Boers, says Bobbs. There was a sharp-faced gentleman sitting beside us, having a drop of malt hot. A great odour of cloves and old Irish rose from him as he turned around. He glared at Kinsella in a nationalistic fashion. That did you great credit, I'm sure. Them Boers never done this little country and any harm for you to be killing them. Are you an Irishman? I am, says Kinsella. Are you a Boer? Not a gleich whether I am or not, says Hot Malt. The Boers was always good friends of this little country, and I don't see what call you had to go killing them. The bottle of stout man glanced nervously up from his bus guide and spoke querulously at us. Sure, what's the good of arguing over that now? Wouldn't they all be dead of old age by this time anyway? I don't see why they should be, says Hot Malt. This mercenary foe of theirs is alive yet. Look at here, says Kinsella. I'm no mendecency foe of anyone. Maybe you know more about the mendecency institution than anybody else in this lounging bar. The bottle of stout man glanced again at his bus guide and called the assistant. How much is your clock fast? The usual 10 minutes, Mr. Rowe. I see. Bring us another bottle. Then he fell to anxious calculation. It'd leave the park gate at 8:40 and to the pillar at 8:45, say, and he glanced round again and we saw the front of a bus come past the window. The bottle of stout man fell to the floor like a trained guerrilla fighter and cowered below the level of the window. The bus drew alongside the stop outside the pub, and its top floor was on a dead level with the lounge in which we sat. The narrowness of the street made ourselves and the passengers intimate spectators of each other. Only one of them took advantage of the proximity thus afforded, a hatchet-faced Elsthrap who swept the features of each of us with a searching sharpness, and then, not altogether satisfied with what she'd seen, nodded grimly and almost threateningly as the bus bore her off. Hey, says Kinsella, that was a dangerous old-looking one that looked in at us off the bus, the one with the face of a DMP man. The bottle of stout man rose to his feet, and after a look out the window turned to Kinsella, who nodded and said, You didn't muss much there. She's a right hatchet, whoever she is. Excuse yourself, said the bottle of stout man. She is my wife, and I'd thank you to keep a civil tongue in your head. He spoke round at the company. You can't expect a man to put up with remarks like that about the woman he loves. Heads were nodded approvingly, and Kinsella was in some confusion. How was I to know she was your wife? And how did you know yourself it was her I was talking about? You were sitting on the floor and didn't see her. I recognised her from your description, said the bottle of stout man, with the quiet dignity of a trained mind. An elderly lady in the corner shook her head and murmured enigmatically into her port. As the old opera says, what the eye doesn't see, the heart won't grieve for. I love you because you love her. Love's young dream, as I always said about my poor spouse. Better the devil you know than the one you don't. But anyway, says Kinsella, resuming his conversation with me, the first man I sees at 0R12, this was in the next war, was Jowes Lochry of the Dirty Shirts. Halt, says he, who goes there? It's me, Jowes, says I. Whacker Kinsella from Messer Street, down by the hospital. Don't be so familiar with your Jowes, says Jowes. How do I know you're not German? I can't speak a word of German, says I. I'm from Messer Street. That doesn't prove anything, says Jowes. I'm from Francis Street, and I can't speak a word of French. Howsoever, I'll take your word for it, the attack is off. We can't go over the top kicking the football in front of us tonight. Why not, says I. The men from my spittoon was looking forward to the bit of exercise. But after losing the ball, says Jowes. Just at that moment, the bottle of stout man, after a hurried look at his bus guide and the clock, fell to the ground as swift as before. Like one of them syrup pots, said Kinsella admiringly, but he was not swift enough. The lady shouted in from the top of the bus. I saw you, she screeched, dodging down there, hiding on the floor, making a jeer of your poor wife with your drunken bowsies of companions. We all visibly blenched and cowered down, not on the floor altogether with a bottle of stout man, but with our faces not far off it. I know yous, you low lot. Tell him to get off the floor now the bus is moving. It moved. and we rose again. "Don't mind me asking you," asked the hot malt of the bottle of stout man, "why is it you don't go in another pub where she can't see you?" The bottle of stout man sighed. "You must forgive a sentimental old fool." Certainly so," muttered Kinsella. "As an old soldier, I concur." The bottle of stout man wiped his eyes. "This is how we met. She looked in at me off the top of the tram. I'll never forget it," said the hot malt. "Neither will we,"